Hey everybody, it's Shaman Sister Sin, and I just wanted to talk to you for a little bit about boundaries. One of the most difficult things about setting boundaries is that many people have trouble with boundaries because they believe other people will reject or abandon them if they try to have boundaries. It can then seem like they were right when some relationships don't last through setting boundaries. Just remember, though, all people will not reject or abandon you for setting boundaries. It's generally only unhealthy or toxic people who have a problem with being required to show basic decency, honesty, consideration, respect in a relationship, right? Because let's be real here, some relationships are not going to survive setting boundaries and requiring the person to behave respectfully. It is what it is. The thing is, this doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong or that you're in the wrong for asking. It means you're asking the wrong person. Now, why does setting boundaries sometimes play a part in relationships ending? Because when you tell somebody you need them to treat you with respect and their response is, no, I'm not going to do that, there's nowhere else to go with the relationship. It is what it is. They have demonstrated that they're not interested in respecting you. This can be painful, but it's not as painful as remaining in the relationship or as painful as refusing to accept this and constantly trying to convince them to change it. Some people are not going to respect your boundaries no matter what you do. They're not interested in respecting you, and they never will be. You can either keep trying to convince them to prove to you that you are worth respect, or you can decide for yourself that you are. You have the power here. It is 100% completely up to you. Are you going to let other people tell you how you should feel about yourself? Are you going to let other people decide your worth for you? Or are you going to decide these things for yourself? Because when you set boundaries in relationships, you are telling the other person that you will only continue in the relationship if they agree to treat you with respect. If their response to that is no, then their response to that is no. If you have to convince somebody that you're worthy of being treated with basic respect, the relationship is not salvageable. Not salvageable. People who understand respect don't need to be convinced, threatened, bribed, or otherwise talked into showing it to you, right? If you have to explain respect to somebody or if you have to convince them, once again, the relationship is not salvageable. A person who doesn't understand from the get-go why you deserve respect will never understand, no matter what you say. This is important to really, really internalize and understand. Otherwise, you could spend years trying to convince somebody of your worth. Right? As we were saying, you can spend years trying to convince a person to prove your worth to you by treating you a certain way, or you can prove it to yourself by stepping back from relationships where you're not being treated with respect. You have the power to choose. When we keep trying to convince an abuser to change, we're asking them to choose us. We're asking them to prove to us that we are important and valuable enough for them to do that. This is a fruitless, painful pattern through which we're trying to convince another person to prove our worth to us. We are saying, if you loved me enough, if I mattered enough, you would not treat me this way. Prove to me that I have worth by not treating me this way any longer. The problem with this is that the way other people treat us is not based on our value or determined by our worth. It's not a reflection of us at all, as a matter of fact. However, because we are seeking to have our worth validated by being chosen, when it appears that we have not been chosen, this can be devastating because the message that we're receiving is that this means we have no worth. Because if we did, they would stop, right? They would start treating us better. This belief is false. In reality, both people in this situation are doing the same thing. They're trying to resolve their own feelings of shame and worthlessness through the other person or through other people. An abuser projects their feelings and their fear of worthlessness onto the victim in an attempt to resolve and disown these feelings. You're not good enough, or you don't think I'm good enough. The victim accepts or even believes these projections because of their own fears and their own feelings of worthlessness, but they attempt to resolve things by trying to convince the abuser to change. So, yes, I am good enough, or yes, I do think you're good enough, you just are not seeing me correctly. It's a vicious cycle. The truth is that nobody in the relationship is actually seeing the other person clearly. Everybody's wounds are in the way. The perception that your worth needs to be recognized by someone else in order to be valid needs to change. Because not only is it hurtful, it's not true. That's not reality. Your worth is not determined by other people's perception of it, ever. You are the only person who gets to decide what your worth actually is. And this applies not just to abusive relationships, but also to any kind of relationship. No person decides your worth for you. That is not power that anybody should ever have. And just remember, one of the best ways to maintain power and agency in your own life is to remind yourself, and this is so important when it comes to narcissistic people and when we're talking about codependency and people pleasing and different things like that. No matter what anybody does, they cannot force a specific reaction out of you. You always, always have a choice. One of the biggest lessons we can learn, both from narcissists and from our own experience as victims of abuse, is how disempowering it is to believe that other people are in control of your thoughts, your feelings, your choices, your behavior. This is not reality, no matter how it feels. When we remember that we have choices, we remember that we have power. That is the key to empowerment. So I hope that clears a few things up for you. I take appointments online, over the phone, via text, via messenger, via email, and through Skype worldwide. So if you're interested in speaking with me one-on-one, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that. I teach workshops, seminars, and clinics throughout the year. So if you want to see what we're running this month, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that as well. And we have the Sacred Healers Recovery Group, which is a support group that meets a few times a month, and we go over different things. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can do that all on littleshaman.org. You've been listening to the Meditations and More podcast, brought to you by BetterHelp.com and littleshaman.org. That's me, Little Shaman. May the Great Spirit bless you. Have a beautiful day.